mean, check out this hair. Bonnie Tyler, eat your heart out. Or in my case, stab your heart out. Hello everyone. My name is Jocelyn, you making me joy, and I want to talk about something that I brought up briefly in my previous video. So I mentioned about people who say good things about the trans community and LGBTQ community, and people who say bad things about the community. And this is a video about the latter, sadly. This is just an example of the kind of systemic discrimination that trans people in the UK face now. And I say systemic wholeheartedly because this is coming from the government. My researcher sent me this message, which I'm just going to read to you, and it's going to explain a lot about what life is like as a trans person in the UK in 2023. This is courtesy of Steph Richards, who says, "The Independent, The Guardian, Novara Media and Pink News have all referred to my work this week, and several journos have followed me. Thank you. I thought I would do a quick state of play regarding single-sex spaces and the Conservatives' culture war before heading off to the UK Labour conference." Hospitals. As my article states, published on the translucent.org website, there are no issues concerning trans women occupying beds in women's wards. Common sense, Rishi Sunak and his party doesn't have any, tells us that invariably hospital wards are designated by a medical condition, not sex. In the last couple of days, many NHS staff have contacted me also saying that there are no issues in hospitals where they work and are appalled at what is going on. Refuges. I have also done some work around shelters. Again, there are no issues regarding trans women. Many domestic abuse service providers no longer use communal shelters, moving to the independent living model. Further, trans folks have our own specialist service domestic abuse providers in Loving Me UK and Gallup UK. Prisons, again, no issues. This hateful, useless government has already moved all trans women except for 6 to the male estate, where they are now likely being sexually assaulted and raped. Sadly, we have been in this situation in the past. Between 2015 and 2017, 4 trans women took their own lives in the male estate because the conditions were intolerable. Changing rooms and toilets. I guess the Tories will suggest that there are issues here too. Where else can they go in the persecution of trans women? I certainly have never experienced a problem, and I suspect the vast majority of people have experienced the same. Sport. Most sporting bodies have now banned trans women from meaningful competition in elite sports, and now there is a hateful campaign being launched regarding our participation in grassroots sports, fun runs, etc. Testosterone-suppressed trans women athletes at the elite level, literally there are just a handful worldwide, have no chance of competing against men in so-called open events. There are ways to include trans women athletes and women with DSD in sports without impacting women's sports. Inclusive language. I am going to sound a bit gender critical here, but service providers need to be careful not to upset women by using inclusive language excessively. Mill Hill has run a campaign about this. The word women must never be erased. Since time immemorial, men have oppressed women who, in general, are trans women's biggest allies. We all seek liberation together from the patriarchy and a world dominated by men. And as if to hone in on that point about prisons even more, my researcher sent me this. 11 transgender inmates sexually assaulted in male prisons last year. The figures from the Ministry of Justice cover inmates who were born and remained legally male but self-identified as female. The total number of transgender victims far exceeds the number who were suspected of carrying out sex attacks, with only one such case in 2019. Segregating trans people away from others of their shared gender just to comply with what their biological sex may have been at birth is hurting trans people. End of story. It's exactly the kind of thing that leftists have been warning about for years now, that conservatives who have all the power, who are currently running this country, using trans people as their culture war scapegoat, is A, no different to 20, 30 years ago when they did it with the gays, and B, the entire intention. It's not about protecting women, it's about hurting trans people. If they really wanted to protect women, they would focus on protecting women, including trans women. And of course, all this negative sentiment trickling down from the top. Yes, trickle down actually kind of works sometimes, but never in economics. All feeds into society becoming far more hostile towards trans people just trying to live our lives. Excuse me for being fabulous. So I was sent this video, again by my researcher, basically just outlining the kinds of attitudes that people like me will have to face all the time in certain circles, in certain debate circles and such. I wouldn't blame any trans person who doesn't want to socialize with people anymore, because this is the kind of attitude that we would encounter.
Over 80% of people think the NHS is in a poor state. You can't blame that on anyone. Where are you going to blame that? Apart from if you're Kemi Badenoch or Suella Braverman.
Trans people.
I was going to go for the immigrants, but...
That was what I initially went for, but then when you said Kemi, I thought, no, what's more cultural?
You're right.
I tell you what, the NHS is blocked up with all of this fucking gender-affirming surgery. That's what it is. 7 million people on the waiting list. 7 million people on the waiting list, all because we're just trying to make people feel more comfortable in their bodies. It's wrong. It's wrong, Ava. It's disgusting.
We're being blamed for systemic issues within the NHS because we're on the waiting lists. What? We're the ones who are in desperate need of medical attention, care, and we're to blame for that? Like, what? Now, if the model of how the NHS runs changed towards trans people accessing healthcare for themselves, say, for example, the informed consent model, a hell of a lot of people on those waiting lists would disappear. Obviously, you still need tests regularly to check bloods, i.e. hormone levels, liver function. This all should really be done with the supervision of endocrinologists who know what hormone levels to look out for and everything. But at the same time, generally speaking, we know what we want. When the time was right for me to start taking hormones, I started taking hormones. When the time was right for me to stop taking hormones, I stopped taking hormones. When the time was right for me to resume taking hormones, I resumed taking hormones. Because I, as an individual and a trans person, know what is best for me. I'm the one that's got to live this life, in this body, in this shell, in this world, in this society. And okay, fair enough, there are some people out there who are less self-aware than I am. I am a little bit gifted in that area. Okay, so sue me or whatever. But considering the rate of detransition, like full detransition, is less than 1% of people who ever start medical transition, I'd say that that's a success. A massive success rate when it comes to applying gender-affirming medical care to trans people. Statistically, more people regret knee surgery than transition. Statistically, more people regret having babies than transition. Well, it's the end of the day, but news does not stop rolling in. So I've been sent this. From Trans Safety Network, you don't need a GRC to have the correct gender recorded on your death certificate in the UK. And now the death certificates are issued in the way a person lived their life following the Brianna J. murder. Now, I'm not going to say that this is a bad thing. In fact, it is kind of the obvious thing to do in order to be compassionate and respectful to the dead. But it does give me the vibe. It gives me the feeling that the government is full of people now clapping and patting themselves on the back, saying, "Don't we look so great and wonderful? We look like the wonderful good guys now." While at the same time not actually lifting a finger to improve the lives of trans people who are in fact still alive. Being kind, respectful and compassionate to dead people is a bare minimum thing. Like, it's cold comfort to those of us who have to live in this country with these rules that are so directly targeted against us. And it seems the beat goes on. So I'm recording this the day after everything else that you'll see in this video, because I have come across yet more staggeringly disappointing information about the Tory party. In video clips shown by Cyrus on his channel, I will link to the video specifically on his channel where he talks about this issue. Basically what happened was, Andrew Boff, lifelong Tory for 50 years and member of the London Assembly, was escorted out for disagreeing vocally with current Home Secretary Sue Heller Haterman while she was spewing blatant transphobia. You catch a glimpse of this in the video clip itself. And he's the one saying, no, there's no such thing as gender ideology, which is correct. Outside the conference, he's heard making the statements that this behaviour is making the Tory party look transphobic and homophobic and is not what the Conservative Party is about. Yes, it is! It absolutely fucking is! How? How can Andrew Boff be so utterly blind to the iniquities inflicted by the Tory party on everyone? Not just the LGBTQ plus community specifically, but also as an atheist and a humanitarian, or at least he claims to be those things. Then why would he not stand up for this kind of thing sooner? I mean, okay, great, the Tories are now full on mask off and he's standing up to that, but this has been going on for a very, very long time, where people's rights are in jeopardy because of what the Tory party is doing. This is not exactly new. Rishi Sunak, when he was first bidding for premiership, was saying transphobic stuff, was saying about how he wanted to segregate trans women from cis women. Like, this is not new. It's certainly not a new attitude for a party that has historically And Cyrus may not know about all this, but I do, and I'm willing to bet that Andrew Boff would as well, as a Tory for 50 years, that back in the 80s and 90s, during the AIDS crisis, Margaret Thatcher willfully and callously neglected the queer community who were suffering from AIDS more than anyone else. So I can't understand why Boff now feels the need to speak out about this sudden turnabout of events that they're making the Tories look transphobic and homophobic. Really? Gosh, I can't imagine why. Could it be that that's been part and parcel of what they're about since, God, my lifetime at least? Who knows? Maybe this is a turning point for Boff. Maybe he's awakening to fresher, greener pastures of more liberal ideology. Who knows? Maybe this is his turning point where he turns his back on an entire party that is structurally transphobic and homophobic. This isn't just a few speakers from the party. This isn't just Rishi and Suella and Liz Truss. This is the party. This is the party. This is baked into the party. Anyway, fuck the Tories, eat the rich, vote them out at the earliest opportunity. Non-binary is valid, and trans people are valid despite what the government says. Was escorted... Oh God, I can't talk.